Thank you so much. Not from Germany, but from France. We are now very much looking forward to the presentation and insights of Professor Dr. Cécile Renouard. You are co-founder and president of the Campus de la Transition. You will tell us in a minute more about your campus. And besides your work at the campus, you, among many other things, you are a professor of philosophy at the Centre Sèvres and professeur invité à l'école de mines, une grande école à Paris. Vous allez présenter en français. Merci beaucoup d'être là et nous sommes...
So thank you very much for being here, and we are very pleased to listen to your presentation. Thank you very much.
Guten Morgen.
So good morning to everyone.
I hope it's okay if I speak in French. I'll try not to speak too fast, and then I can answer questions also in English. Je suis très honorée et
I am very honored and very happy to be here today. So originally, at the beginning of the project, or what we had actually planned regarding the Great Transition, implementing the Great Transition. I'm sorry, I have to come back to the last slide. Sorry. So originally, for this campus of transition, there was this question namely to know how to elaborate strategies or collective strategies between universities, higher education institutions. So in France, we have then engineer schools and commercial schools who are sort of like in parallel to the universities, and also the NGOs and associations together with the public services, and how to collaborate together. And we spoke about the necessity to collaborate, to work together, and to structurally change things and to integrate ecological and social aspects, not in a cosmetic way, and also without doing any greenwashing. So what I mean by that, I'd like to talk about the experience of our campus of the Great Transition. And so from a French context where it was born or founded, then I will present the resources that we have at hand or that we have developed with an ecosystem composed of researchers of various schools and universities. And also I will give you an example of a university in France, Énergie Fournoise, and so who accompanies then other universities. So, and I will try to present a couple of, let's say, levers for the introduction or insertion of such structures in the campus life and also in the universities. I'm also very happy to be able to speak or to have an exchange discussion with you. So this campus of transition, what is its goal? It wants to transform the higher education and for today's responsible people and also those of tomorrow, for solidarity and for ecology. And we especially emphasize what we do on competences and transitional competences in order to be able to act at the right level where there are obstacles, for example, or where there are problems. So originally, we had this experience that many people from the collective groups who had founded this campus, they wanted a sort of parallel education. So when these students came there with a, let's say, international perspective. So I worked a lot in Nigeria to see the effects of the petrol on the social connections and what really was remarkable or what impacted. So we spoke with a lot of American, French, and English managers, and then also in Nigeria, all these hubs, petrol hubs. Well, people were speaking without being really connected what was going on in the respective territories, for example, in Niger and also in those petrol zones. One of the questions that arises, how to cope, how to have education, to have such subscriptions and in those territories. Bruno Latour, the philosopher who recently deceased, he said that the idea of a campus is to be in the territory. So we are about 80 kilometers from Paris in Seine-et-Marne, in a village with 400 inhabitants, close to a city with 20,000 citizens or inhabitants, and where you have a rather higher rate of unemployment. And it is very multicultural. And so we are in a small village where half of the population votes for the far right wing. And in the great city, they are more to the far left. And so we are in a region where you have a more moderate engagement, commitment of municipalities and territorial collectivities. And so in order to change this subject or to address this subject. And so we work together with higher education institutions, with the territorial collectivities, and also those who want to form such collectivities, and so that we can move on in a stronger manner. And we also work with enterprises. And so the idea is to propose then immersive experiences in a location where there is education, where there are also research projects at various levels, and also experimentation to really concretely live together and to connect with each other, and to try to propose an experience that is not only, let's say, against an ecology, for example, but also to live in a solidarity mode. So we'd like to give the example to show that we can live in a much more, let's say, humble manner, but also still being very happy and in a mode of solidarity. So that's a transition we're talking about. And what we also try to do is to propose initiatives also by networking with establishments, or let's say institutions of higher education, as partners who are also interested then in such a campus project. So to give you a bit of context, what's going on in France, I think there are certain similarities between France and Switzerland here within Europe, is also the very strong mobilization of students. So we have a movement for this, let's say, ecological awareness that has been implemented since years. And so it commits then not only the leaders in education, but also the French politicians. So whatever is implemented today is just not sufficient. So the campus works a lot with this movement in order to make things more, to have this awareness. And so we're talking about a lot of networks who are composed of a lot of engineers. It's people who work for free as well as people who are employed. So Jean-Marc Movici, many of you know him. He has controversial approaches or ideas, but he, let's say, faces the French government in order to take all these various aspects of living together, mobility, renovation of buildings, nutrition, agriculture, hobbies, and also digital transition. And so these engineers say, well, in order to make that change happen, this is what we need to do. And so there is this appeal that is done then to the public. And so there's also an institutional group that has been founded 5 years ago by the Minister of Interior Affairs, who was a member of the IPCC, and who launched a reflection to propose, and now we have a lot of requests by for all universities and schools then to introduce a new structure so that all students who, let's say, are going through the 3 first years of higher education, and so that all students be formed or be educated in such a transition, such a transformation. So This was a request on behalf of those higher education institutions. And so networks have developed and in order to make things happen. So what the campus is trying to do is, well, 5 years ago, we had a request from the Minister of Higher Education who said that the campus is a sort of a location that is outside of the system because we are an organization or association, but we are a good ecosystem of researchers and teachers, of professionals who wish to work together, to collaborate. And at the campus, they also asked to have a common denominator for the competences for such a transition. So we reunited about 80 teachers of all disciplines, of all universities and schools, some teachers, lecturers, and also some students and some practitioners. And we worked in 2 different directions. So this is what created the common denominator and to have this great transition handbook. So we have a summary that is free and online from the campus of this. For these 80 pages, the manual that's composed of 80 pages, and we have 2 task forces who work with professors of various disciplines, subjects, in order to integrate these or to address these ecological and social issues in all the various disciplines and subjects. And we have a small manual for this great transition that are being published currently. So we have 6 here, and 2 of them are going to be published in the faculties, and that will be available in the libraries. And 2 of them are transversal pedagogy of this transition, and also 1 regarding the campus. So we worked about the transition of the campuses with the universities, with the schools, so people who are very committed to such a transition. And what is pedagogy of transition? So we're talking about experiments that have been carried through within the campuses, and with researchers of various countries who also try to carry through various experiences, and also from the Schumacher College. I don't know if you know this one, who is was created 25 years ago in England by Matish Kumar with a vision from Ghana, and then addressing spiritual, ecological, and economical issues, and who is very worried about promoting a pedagogy that comprises the head, the heart, and the hand, these senses. And we speak about, we are talking about head, body, and heart, not only going through the mind, but everything that has to do with nature and everything that has to be considered within the territory. So we have small manuals regarding management and public health, questions about philosophy, legal and norms and relations, and all of that is inspired by the framework, the methodology framework that we have built up for this grand transition. We have 6 so-called entrances, and so that is going to link all the competences, all the work that we have. What are we doing? Well, we have Greek terms here. It's the etymology of ecology and of the terms of ecology and economy. And we have also added ethos, praxis, and dynamis. So here in our manual, this is the order. Ecos is everything that happens within our own common household, everything about, let's say, sciences, engineers, sciences, human societies, measured limits and possibilities. And ethos is we want to build new, fair, and sustainable ways of living together, as Paul Ricoeur, the philosopher, said, with and for others. And so, yeah, sustainable ways of living together, and then also responsibility of various players and actors, and also competences of
la question des métriques, des normes, des règles du jeu.
So nomos is about all the rules, the decisions of the government, economical questions, financial questions, science and politics. So everything that will attract a way to live together and will create transformational change in structures. And it's a change in the mental models. Then we have this entry point of logos, and you can see that it's all about changing norms and standards, but we need a common story that will bring us together. So logos is about stories, about the words we are using, and also about working on controversies around words we are using, and also stories. Telling story is a way of saying that we are basing ourselves on common research, but we also need a certain rationale, a symbolic rationale. These are different registers, but they are actually complementing each other. So logos, in regard to skills, it's actually a prospective way of thinking. So how can we imagine a future? What is a very probable future, or what do we wish to have as a future, or what is also the possibility of the future? Praxis, that's the question of the actors. So it's about collaboration, cooperation of different and various actors in the field. And for the skills, we have the cooperative skills, working in a team, and how can we cooperate on various levels. It's also about political actions and means of political actions on campus, young people who can be very militant, but also it's about how to be radical, but non-marginal, non-exclusive, and how can we work together with people who don't have the same convictions as we do? And that's quite complicated, actually. That's quite complex. So dynamis, that's actually this reconnection. That's also quite complex, this notion of dynamis. It's actually coming back to nature, to our community, to coming together. It's also about psychology, about the higher sense of things, the higher meaning of things. So we have tried, and you will get the presentation, to define these 6 competencies, the 6 skills, and all this framework is actually quite similar. So for the European Union, we have the conference of the big schools and the universities in France. Then we have Peter Singer and the theory and his theory. And then it's actually quite converging. And we also have a cooperation with various universities. In Cergy, we have 24,000 students, and we've actually accompanied the School of Engineering in their reflections on humanity and design. That's what their course is called, and that's about the institution that looks at economy and institutions. So the idea is already we want to cooperate with engineers and with professors in economy, in business administration, and it's all about teaching, about higher education. We have the ESSEC that is actually part of the University of Cergy. So we've tried to get this huge mammoth going, and we've had professors who said, oh, our priorities is really teaching the students and see the difficulties that the students have so they can get to the 2nd year. And they have a very open university. We've had many discussions with them, and we thought about it very hard with them. We've said that we need to first base ourselves on active minorities. So people who really want to change things, who want to make these experiences, for them it's not something in addition. They want to have this change. They want to base their work
de salariés très volontaires, ces étudiants
on the cooperation with professors, with other workers, to finally see how they can get further ahead. Instead of working in a mass setting on a larger scale, they want to work from the inside out in a small class maybe, for the benefit of all the students of the School of Engineering, for example, and so that all university students could have a class, a course, because it's all about having an active dialogue around the various disciplines, and it's about the service learning. How can we work with all these various components and with the idea to actually promote creativity? And I don't have much time anymore, so I'm sorry, I have to end my presentation. But I'd like to talk about the 4 big levers I see. It's actually the position we take and also about the content. So asking the right questions, how we want to position ourselves, maybe also a learning position. And then the organizational and institutional level, creating a larger scale by actually teaching the teachers, and maybe a new evaluation, a new estimation, and to see what really counts. Then the financial lever and leverage. I think we don't have enough means. How can we make lobbying? How can we do lobbying? How can we create these financial flux to create the means that are necessary? And then the political scale, the large scale in politics. We have to have access to actors, and we have to have a strategy to work with these active minorities to be able to sketch a strategy for the future. So I've come to an end. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing this amazing example of your campus and your approaches and the idea behind. I think you know the game by now. We have this QR code. Let's have it again for questions. And before we go to a break, we will exchange now with you for 5 minutes. You can come a little bit closer. Thank you. So I take a first question. It's in French. Ne risquez-vous pas d'attirer ce...
Do you not risk to attract only people who are already convinced on your campus? And how can you create interest, and how can you create dialogue with skeptics?
Already interested people or students to your campus, and how do you deal with people who are more skeptic?
Oui, et je rejoins ce qui a été évoqué.
Yes, I will actually repeat what has been said already about the political role that we can actually assume in the best sense of the word politics. It's about a good way of living together. And from the beginning on the campus, we've actually really concentrated on not only focus on the little
avec des gens très convaincus.
Not only staying in our own bubble, but
être radical et non marginal.
That's what I would try to say with being radical but not marginal. We are trying to make sure that the people who come to the campus are not only the ones that are already convinced ahead of time, but a master in economics or in international finances of, for example, a university in northern France. They come to us for 2 days, and there are students who are very convinced about ecology, but there are others who are there for just the financial aspect of the course. So how can we develop projects on an international level that are profitable financially, and the director of the master is somebody who's really convinced, so he's really happy to have students on the campus for these experiences, and we really try to have researchers coming and directors from different schools coming, deans of other schools coming, who are convinced and others who are less convinced, so we can actually nourish the dialogue, because it's all about having an open controversy. But it's like Patrick Vivray, the French philosopher, said, it's the culture of fruitful controversy, actually. Unfortunately, we only have a few minutes left, so there are very interesting questions that are coming in. Second question, how can we bring into, or how can we take into account spirituality and morality into I've actually had dinner with some of you, and I believe in France it's a bit complicated because we have this layman tradition, and there is a fear that things will turn into a sect. So we have this double view. We have to be really careful. But I am in contact with university professors from Montpellier who have actually created something that is really making sure that we respect all this laicism, this laymanship. I don't know if you know about Joanna Macy. She's an American biologist. I think she's 93 years old. It's written The World That Reconnects. It's a whole process in 4 steps to help students, professors, and whole teams to confront their emotions and to fight their anxieties. There are 4 steps. First is gratitude, then seeing the miracle of what is around us, so we can call that nature, then whatever astonishes us in the world that is around us. That's often a reason for anxiety with the younger people. War, for example, in Ukraine. How can we actually handle these negative emotions and then change our perspective and work on the causes, the reasons? What is the reason for this? How did we come here as a society? How did we arrive at this overconsumption? How did we become so abstract? How did we create this wall? It's what is called the strategies of collective suicide. But 4th point is, how can we go ahead? How can we move forward? And there are certain methodologies. I'm telling you about one that is quite known, and there are university professors who work on that and in the classroom, but you can also do that apart from classrooms. There will be a publication at Springer's in 2 months, but I think it has been said already, we need a lot of resources, and I believe that there are sites that are sharing these resources for the transition, and we need to see what is adequate for cultures and also political cultures of certain institutions. I believe those 4 points will maybe also give you the answer to the last question. How can you actually sustain the group energy, and how can you actually manage the inherent fears? That's a huge topic. We have a lot of cases of burnout. We can feel the fragility of those who think about these topics all the time, the whole day long. And I believe that we really have to be careful about this. We have to help each other. We have to be vigilant. We have to find certain rhythms that are adequate. And my personal experience here is that what works for one person will not necessarily work well for another. So we have to help each other to be careful about themselves, what helps them, what is good for them. And for me, all 2 months, I leave the campus for 10 days to be on my own, where I'm not immersed all the time. But for others, it's another tool. We have a huge collective tool. We dance together, actually. So we need to find ways to bring some lightness into the thing, some pleasure. We need to experience positive things together. That's very important, I believe. And it doesn't matter the context in which we are actually finding each other. And there's also a little bit of philosophical or spiritual work to do. It's about, opposed to what said Levinas, who has written beautiful things, but who says, each one of you carries the whole weight of the world on our shoulders, but none of us is the savior, but together we can change things. But none of us has to save the world on their own. Thank you very much.